You're listening to Learn How to Podcast with Natascha Moy and the Power of Podcasting. Now, I know that I say podcasting funny and it sounds a bit like podcasting, but you have to give me a little bit of breath for my accent. And I have had people come back and say to me, practice the word pod, and then you can go podcasting. So I am aware of that, and I'm working really hard to do it. So I am a podcasting coach. I teach one-to-one. I teach celebrities how to podcast, and I also do podcasting workshops. So I am doing some episodes to help you if you are interested in learning how to podcast and work out a little bit about what it is that you need to know. So today I'm going to talk about my favorite thing, editing. Okay, editing is not my favorite thing. I hate editing. Editing is my idea of hell. And I think it is the one reason why nobody would ever want to podcast. It is laborious, time-consuming, complicated, frustrating. In fact, I can find so many words for editing. And if you are a busy person and you are creating a podcast and you've decided to do it on your own and not use a sound engineer or someone to help you, you will soon find the tears pouring down your face with frustration. So, in saying that, a little bit of editing goes a long way. And what I teach my students to do is how to do a podcast without editing very much. And there are some tricks to doing that. The first thing that is really important to know is you cannot have a perfect podcast. It is absolutely unavailable. There is no such thing. You might like the podcast you did, you might think it's good, but it will never ever be perfect. And if you work towards perfection, you will fail and it will be sad, and then you will never ever create one. So my suggestion is that you expect at the beginning that it will not be perfect. And for all the women out there who love to be perfect, you know that you're going into it expecting that there will be some mistakes, and that's just fine. So I often ask my students, what is a mistake? What do you consider to be a mistake in an interview? Well, if you're interviewing someone, you're sort of stuck to the process. You can't really stop them in the middle and say, I'm terribly sorry, this is a disaster. I don't like the way I sound, and let's start again. Because chances are, you're just not going to get them to do it. So you need to go in very, very well prepared. You need to go in knowing that you have a script, if that's how you like to work. I don't work with the script, but I know many, many people who do. And I will touch on script writing and how to create a script later on in another episode. So you need to have a script and an outline. You need to have done an incredible amount of research around your guest or your topic. So you need to have a very clear idea of how you want to go. So if you're doing it like me now, just on your own, it can be a little bit harder and it can be a little bit easier. If you want it to be exact, I think it's going to be quite difficult. My suggestion is that you allow for themes that you want to talk about, and the themes give rise to the conversation that you're having with essentially yourself and one other person who is listening to you, because you are only ever talking to just one person. As I've said in the episode before on imposter syndrome, you are never speaking to anyone other than one person. You cannot do this like anybody else. You have to be authentic and you have to be real. And as people, we make mistakes. I make mistakes every single day, all the time. And I look at them and I think, wow, that's lovely. She has some character. Or, gee, that's funny. It's a mistake, but it made me laugh. So you have to assume that your mistakes or the things that you may do actually add to the character of your podcast and to your own personality, because none of us are perfect. So the idea that you will make mistakes has to kind of sit with you from the beginning. You can at times, like I did an episode just now and I forgot to hit record. So yes, that is what I would consider to be a massive mistake. Swearing, it depends. I certainly wouldn't go for some of the words like the C word or any of those, unless of course that's something that you think your listeners might be interested in. But if you are interviewing someone and they happen to swear, I don't think fuck is the worst thing that you can hear on a podcast, or any of the other words, really. So that's not really a mistake. Coughing and spluttering, they potentially are. So my suggestion is that if someone coughs or you cough, you note down the time, because you can see the time running on your software. Note down the time in a second. Quickly write it down. And then what you can do is you can go back to that exact place and you can edit out the cough or the sneeze. I once did an entire interview where I called the gentleman who I was interviewing by his son's name. And I got to the end of the interview and I said to him, "How was that?" And he said, "It was marvelous." He said, "But that's not my name." And I could feel this little sadness inside me. And I thought, well, that's awful. And I had to then go through the 30 minutes, which took me about an hour and a half, and I had to slowly but surely remove the name that I had called him, and it's not easy. You can record small little bits that you want to maybe insert, but if you want your podcast to be a production, you probably need to hire someone to help you with that production. If you want your podcast to be something natural and real and believable, then you need to go with the flow and reduce the editing as much as possible. So I don't work from a script. I find if I have a script, I become very anxious. And I'm more terrified of making mistakes with a script. I think, oh, I've missed that, or I didn't say that properly. So I tend to work quite a lot up front. I think about what I'm going to say. Sometimes I jot down keywords and then I just go. I do that as an MC as well, and often when I'm giving talks, I will just stand and I will present from that point of view. I work with an amazing producer, and she loves to have questions. She will work with her questions, and she will send her questions to her guests up front, and they will then know what's coming, and she will then be able to work through her questions and not need to edit at the end of that either. For those of us who come from a broadcasting background, lots of us have done live shows. And when you're going through a live show, there is no time to stop. You're on air, people are listening to you, you stumble, you fall, and you just get up and you keep going. It's a really great training ground for podcasting, because it means that, you accept that there are things that are not great. Sometimes if you bang something, you drop something, there's a loud sound, you want that out. That would be a mistake. So that's my phone buzzing in the background, which should have been switched off. I would consider that a mistake. I would take that out. That's something I would write down and take out. A long pause or a silence is definitely not a mistake. The idea around a pause sometimes creates drama, sometimes creates thought. It's not the end of the world to have something like that. With a lot of the software, it's quite easy to edit, and I use a software called Adobe Audition, which is what I'm very comfortable with. It is a paid for subscription, and as a paid for subscription, it costs a bit of money, but it's very intuitive, it's very easy, it's what I learnt on, and it's what I share with most of my students. I suggest that they use that. However, there is a software called Audacity, which is almost exactly the same. Doesn't have as sexy an interface, but it's very, very simple and very easy to use. And I highly recommend that people just go onto YouTube and actually learn how to edit from there, because there are so many videos. That's where I learn how to do everything. It's where I learn how to cook. It's where I learn a lot about my software and a lot about how to do things. So those are the ones that I recommend. However, there are so many that you can use, and the idea is that you would literally go in, select the area that you don't want, and delete it. And sometimes you would want to put something in, but very rarely. I tend to take things out and very rarely put anything in. So editing is something that you will have to do a little bit of. You will need to sound balance a bit. You might need to play around with some of the effects that you want, but you wouldn't necessarily want to edit any long form. Any long form edit that you need to do, you've got to dedicate quite a few hours to that. And I think that if you do that, you will not be podcasting in the future. It will be a one-hit wonder, and you'll go, this is too hard. I don't want to do this. I don't necessarily like to pay for things, so I tend to do my podcast so that I can finish it, top and tail it with the outro and the intro, and then I upload it. So editing for outros and intros, that is something that we will talk about in another episode, that you will need somebody professional to help you with. And we'll talk about how important an outro and an intro is, and also how you would actually introduce your show. So I highly recommend that editing is not something that you want to be doing. It is something you want to touch on minimally, and you want to get some nice software that you can use and learn a little bit. As I said, YouTube is a great place to do it. It's there's so many different fantastic options there. And that is my take on editing. So we will be back with a couple of other episodes. If you have any questions for me, please send an email to hello@powerofpodcasting.com.au, or visit my website, which is powerofpodcasting.com.au. Just subscribe and you can get some of my updates. Join one of my workshops. You can also do a discovery call with me. So find out if you want to work with me, maybe want to do one of my one-to-one workshops. And I often will have a webinar or something where you can hop on and I can help you. I want as many people podcasting as possible, so I'm hopefully going to help you with some of these videos. I'll be back with another one after.